for vacations, we'll think about, first you want to decide, where we want to go and what kind of a vacation do you want it to be, and think about that a year or 6 months ahead of time, and then you start planning towards accomplishing that goal.
I would say one thing that worked well for us is like points. So we try to get like, debit cards or credit cards that'll give us a lot of points that we can use. So what we really try to plan for whenever it comes to vacations are those extra expenditures. So we'll tend to spend more on the hotel room if we're spending points on airline tickets, or more money on, food and things like that daily, because we're not spending so much money on the airline ticket or things like that.
Yeah, we try to be smart about that and say how many airline miles do we have and where can we go with that? Because that takes a large portion out of that cost that you can reallocate to having fun or doing dinner or some things like that.
All right, so building a budget. Budgeting is major for everyone, but budgeting also can be a problem for some people. So how do you recommend that people not just build a budget for themselves, but as a couple? What's the first step they should do?
When I meet with couples, I'm a huge proponent of having a spreadsheet and filling it right then and there. Normally, they'll have pre-assigned homework where they'll come with that information. How they do it, whether they do it on paper or whether they type it out. I like the electronic soft version, soft copy, that's me. But more importantly, I think, is not only just having the tool, but how do you hold yourself accountable and how are you going to execute it?
Absolutely.
I totally agree. So when we start talking budget, or when I start talking budget with someone, I always start with looking backwards.
That's a good way. Yeah.
At the end of the day, I have people come in who's like, hey, I know I'm not saving money. Here's my new budget. I'm going to spend $50 on food this month. I go, okay, let's take a look at what's been happening. They've been spending $400 on food. I'm like, okay, you're gonna starve. So let's maybe set something a little more realistic.
Yeah.
And so with that, I break it down into 3 categories. So I start with the fixed expenses. And those are just the things that do not change. So your rent or your mortgage, right? That's the same every month. Daycare, absolutely. Your variable expenses, so these are kind of things that do change. Your dining out, your clothes, your gas, your that. And then what I call non-monthlies, which are those things coming up that are gonna bust your budget, which you're probably thinking about. They can be one-off things that only happen once, so like a wedding, or maybe someone's birthday, or a gift around the holiday. They can also be routine things, right? So maybe when you get your tires rotated, that happens at a set amount of time. Or maybe you pay your property taxes every 6 months. Those sort of one-time, but they do reoccur.
Yeah, absolutely. We just got our auto registration renewal.
Yep.
And we weren't planning for that because we just moved to a new state, but now I know to plan for that in our budget going forward.
I think car maintenance, registration, all of that are great examples.
Absolutely.
And clearly in my office, we see that all the time. So from my chair, we've got ways to help mitigate that. And I usually will help couples with, so that with that bucket, it's more like you've got your kind of bad things, things that are unexpected, things that are emergency-like, and then you're more fun. Because you want to spice that chat up a bit. You don't want to think it's all about the home owner's deductible or whatever. So I think it's important for people to have both angles on that, because when people are getting married, they don't just show up and say, hey, come to my wedding tomorrow. So there's that planning and the non-planned. And I think that's what people have a hard time understanding. Well, how much is appropriate? Well, what do I need? Well, what's your deductible? What's a normal car repair? I mean, those kinds of things. Because otherwise it sounds very doom and gloom, or it sounds very rosy, and it can be both. And we just don't know.
So yeah, when we talk about emergency funds, we really think about them for 4 main things. There is home repair, car repair, medical issues, so that could be you having a medical issue, maybe a disability, or it could be, hey, I need to fly and see a family member who's ill, some expense from there, or it could be job loss. So those are kind of the big 4.
And Axel, when you're working with couples, are there any items that you see that they aren't including in their budget that you would like to see them include more of in their budget, or you like them to take into consideration?
And I think the key for that is the homework assignment. So normally it doesn't happen in the first appointment, so I assign a lot of homework. And so that is part of it, is trying to nail down all of that information, because otherwise there's a lot of gaps and you're not going to really be able to plan with 80% of the solution.
What about you, Dan? Are there any items that you say, you didn't include this in your budget, and I'm wondering why?
For me, that's retirement. Because a lot of times when we're just starting out, or even if we're not just starting out, that's automatically out of the paycheck into a 401k. And so we start working our budget from what comes in, and then we start working on what comes out, and we don't even think about it because that's already come out. You know what I mean? Our what comes in is take-home pay. It's after taxes, it's after retirement. So we don't really think about retirement, and then maybe we find out, hey, reason one person's making less than the other is they're putting away 10% and the other person's putting away 2%. And so having that conversation of what does retirement look like? What do we want it to look like? Where should that be coming from? Who should be saving it? It's an important conversation that sometimes gets missed.
Definitely. Budgeting isn't for everyone, but everyone needs a budget. And I think we've identified different ways that couples can create a budget that works for them. Let's have a look at what we've learned. Make sure you check out all of our tools, support, and education, as well as all of our other courses. Thanks for joining us. See you next time.